Hi, I'm Vanessa and welcome to my sewing room. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I've been having a hard time juggling everything, whether it's the alterations that come into my house, and I do free alterations for my neighbors, or with doing stuff for Ellie Mac, homeschooling, doing tester calls. It's just been a lot and it's been hard to balance everything. So I decided what I'm going to do is show you guys some of the alterations and the new sews that I do for my friends, family, and neighbors. So today we're going to be making a jumper. So this is for my dear friend. She is in her 80s and she's not in her 80s. She is 80 and she's just amazing, sweet person, and I'm just so excited to do this for her. So this is the second jumper I made. This is going to be one out of woven, and look how gorgeous this fabric is. We're going to be using some wooden buttons. I think this is gonna be darling. And then we're gonna be lining it with this yellow. And this dress I think is gonna make a really adorable summer jumper. So let's get started. Here's another quick tip. If you need to line your fabric, I actually like to line my lining fabric up on top of my finishing outside fabric and then cut both together. This just cuts down on time and it makes sure that everything lines up perfectly. So you can see I keep my measurements close and handy, and then I'm going to take the bust line, and that's where I'm going to start grading out from the medium to an extra large, and this process goes pretty quick. So what I'm cutting out here is actually the princess sides of this jumper top, and then I'm going to actually lay one side on top of the other to make sure that my grading is even with both sides of this jumper princess seams. I laid both the front and the lining fabric with the front of this jumper as well. So I'm cutting out 2 pieces of fabric right here. And once I'm done, I'm going to continue cutting out the rest of my pattern. Now this bodice has a placket, so I need to cut out some interfacing. I'm cutting out strips of 1.5 inches, and I'm going to cut out 2 of these for both sides of my placket. From the placket, now I'm going to be cutting out these cute cottagecore pockets. The original pattern had a very full skirt, and so right here I'm measuring to make sure the front and the back are 30 inches wide to give a little bit more of a subtle gather and exactly what my friend wanted. Here I'm marking the pockets. I'm actually using the same edge of the skirt as the original to find out where my pockets need to be placed, and I'm marking it in chalk. So now I'm cutting out the back of my bodice, and I'm just going to be cutting it out and then marking my chalk lines. Each one of these lines on the back is what creates the shearing effect, and you put in elastic every other, so make sure you mark them clearly and dark enough that it's going to last when you're sewing. So I went through and finished cutting out the rest of the pattern, the whole back, and this is about all that I have left as far as fabric left over from cutting. It's amazing how close we cut it. So I've added my interfacing to my bodice, and now I'm going to be clipping on those princess sides, and I'm going to be doing the outside fabric and then the liner fabric separately. So once I remove my clips at my sewing machine, I'm going to be sewing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to be going around the curve. Sometimes this can be hard. It's a little bit different than a straight edge, but if you move in small areas at a time, it makes it a lot easier than trying to get it all going straight from the very beginning. So just small increments, sew down, and then grab your next little increment and continue that curve. So after I finish sewing my front bodice and lining, I'm now sewing on those chalk lines. So you fold over your fabric and then you follow each chalk line straight back. I've noticed that if I flip the fabric as I sew, it makes sure that it stays even and one side doesn't start pulling over to the other side. From here, it's taking my different sizes of elastic, and I'm just going to start using a safety pin and moving them through the casings that I made every other. I love how this looks so beautiful, just like shearing, and then all it is using elastic. It's so comfortable to wear, and yet I feel like it's going to hold together a little bit better than if I were to do elastic thread in my sewing machine. So after the first one, I'm just going to keep moving up one layer at a time, and then I'm going to make sure that I pin both layers so the elastic does not come out, and I can take it to my sewing machine to secure it. But seriously, this is such a cute, quick hack. I love this so much. Look how adorable this back is looking. So now while I'm sewing it, I'm just taking out the needles and I'm just securing in the elastic. I'm trying to go over on the edge so this way I don't have to take the stitch out later. Now I'm closing the seams of both my liner and of my bodice on the shoulders. Now I'm taking the gathered back and I'm putting it on the back panel on the side, and then I'm going to take the lining piece and sandwich it in. Now I'm going to do this on both sides with the back, and so when I fold over the lining, the seams on the side is going to be covered. I'm going to be lining up the shoulder seams and making sure I put a clip there, and then I'm going to start moving onto the front placket. Now I'm just sewing up that inside seam. After sewing all around the bodice, now it's time to clip the edges, and then I like to put little snips in where the fabric is kind of at a curve. This helps it sit smoother and opens up when I'm ironing it down. So after turning everything out, I'm going to lay down my bodice and work on my burrito roll. This is just rolling up one side of the bodice and then wrapping the other side around it so I can complete the arm circle and have finished edges. So you're just going to clip around just the arm circle, and then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and just sew from the base of the arm circle all the way around to the other side. I'm keeping the same seam allowance that I've been sewing the rest of my garment with so far, and you just want to make sure that you don't accidentally catch any of that fabric in between, because that's going to cause some major issues, and this is just not an area that you want to unpick once you turn it out. It can be kind of tricky to turn it out, so I'm being very careful to only sew where my clips are. Now it's time to turn it all out, and I'm telling you, this can be a little tricky. I actually went and got some forceps to help pull out the other side of the bodice. So you're fitting quite a bit through the shoulders, but it's totally worth it because it ends up looking so nice. Now all that's left to sew is the side body, so I'm going to line up this center seam, and this is between the liner and the outside fabric, and clip it. And then I'm going to clip down the sides, and I'm just going to sew straight across this, and then the liner will fold over underneath the outside fabric, and then you have a fully lined bodice, sides and all, with no seams showing on the inside. And this is one of those things that makes me love this pattern. It looks so nice and professional and finished afterwards, but there's just some tricks that you have to do in order to get it to that point. Now moving on to the pockets, I want to make this cute detail for the pockets. So I folded over a 2-inch piece of fabric, and I'm sewing it onto the outside of my pocket, and so I can fold under and give a cute little inside detail. Now you can see right here, I'm going to fold it under, and then I'm going to take it to my ironing board before I top stitch it on. I'm sewing it just a 1/4 inch from the bottom of the yellow fabric, and this way it's going to give me a nice 1-inch hem on my pocket. Now you can see my chalk marks on my skirt, and I've actually ironed in my serge, and then from here I'm just going to pin on this pocket. And you know, this pocket's a little bit different. It's wider on the top and skinnier as it goes down, and it's meant to stick out just a little bit. It gives it a little bit more of a cottagecore feel, and so you got to make sure that you're pinning on your pocket in a square instead of the shape that it is. And then we're just going to sew it on. Now at the sewing machine, you can see right here, I'm going to start top stitching on my pocket. Now a 1/4 inch sometimes looks a little wide, so I'm just going to go a little shy of a 1/4 inch, between the 1/4 and 1/8 inch, just to sew this on. I don't like to sew over my needles. I'm always scared that I'm going to break my needle doing this, so I remove them and I lift up my presser foot to do all turns, and I sew on my pocket. So the placket actually comes all the way down through the skirt. So I have already ironed on my interfacing as well as serged it and folded it over, and now I'm going to fold over one more time, and I'm going to top stitch this down. Now this is going to end up creating the facing for my pockets. Okay, so I'm like 30 minutes into this dress. Just kidding. We are on day 2 and I am probably 4.5 hours so far. So this is one of those longer sews, but it's an enjoyable one. The instructions are amazing and there's so many details that I find enjoyable. I like doing woven for this reason. So this is where we're at. And again, this is not my size, but I just want to show you what it's going to look like. So this is going to come over and we're going to have buttons. Now on the back, it is elastic. So this is going to give it that ability to stretch and be a really cute figure. Now with the skirt, so far what we have is where we're going to do the buttons. And then we have the cottagecore pockets. Now I made this skirt so it would be 1.5. So from right here to right here is 1.5 gather. And I'm gonna do a smaller gather. I'm gonna do more of like an heirloom at like 2.5, 3 millimeters instead of 5. And I'm gonna hand gather it. The back's a little different because of the elastic right here. This center back is already gonna be gathered. So right here, and I've already done all the measurements. So right here is 5 inches. So I'm gonna gather it 7.5 inches onto this 5 inches. And it's gonna keep the same amount of gather that's in the front. And then the back, I'm going to stretch out the center and I'm not gonna gather it and like stretch out this center. And then when the skirt is added right here, it's gonna gather by itself. And then from there, we're gonna add the buttons and we're going to roll hem the bottom. Okay, so we're getting there. It's getting close. We've done so many different techniques. We have burrito rolled our straps right here. We've done princess seams on the front. Her original one had cute pin tucks. And so I even like top stitched it to give it her inspo look. So there's so many things that you can learn by doing a really big woven pattern. I suggest take your time, do it over a couple days or weeks, and just really enjoy that sewing time because these turn out to be really beautiful and I just love it. I love watching them come together. So I'm hoping you're enjoying it so far. Now I've serged down my edges of my skirt and now I'm just sewing them together. After sewing my skirt together, I iron down the seams. Now this iron mark in the middle, this is where I'm going to measure how far apart I don't need to gather. So I'm going to mark 8 inches on each side of the skirt, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew 2 lines of stitches. They're about 3 millimeters apart to that chalk mark. And then I'm going to start pulling my threads so I can make it gathered. I love doing the 2 lines because it means that it's less likely to have the threads break, and then I'm going to spread out my gathers evenly between those 2 marks, between the chalk mark and between the end of my skirt. So after doing one side of the gathers, I have the other side to do. So again, I'm going to pull the 2 thread lines. This is the bobbin thread that helps give the gathers. So just pull the bobbin threads and I'm going to go all the way onto this side of the skirt as well, making even gathers all the way. So if you've been confused on where's going to be gathered and where's not, right here I'm showing you that I'm going to put the gathers in the front and then I'm not going to put the gathered fabric where I have the elastic in the back giving that shearing effect, because it's going to actually make the bottom of that fabric look gathered as well. Now, if you did the pattern like the instructions, you're going to actually have it gathered all the way throughout. This is just to make it a little bit less full and give a little bit more slender look to the finished garment. So there's a lot of alterations that you can make when it comes to gathers, and this is just the one that my friend wanted for this particular dress. Once I have my gathers perfectly stretched, now it's time to sew it on to the outside fabric, and I'm just going to be sewing it at a 3/8 seam allowance just like before, and I'm hoping to catch it on that bottom stitch gather to make sure that all my gathers are nice tight gathers without any tucks. I hate when the fabric folds over on itself and you have to unpick the whole area and sew it on. So this is just a really nice place to take it slow. Now, whenever I have a gathered waist, I actually like to put elastic on the inside serge, but I also want to have finished details at my placket. So I'm going to fold underneath my fabric on the placket and top stitch that on. And then I'm going to take my lining fabric and I'm going to attach it where I've already attached my gathers. And I'm going to take it to the serger and lightly add on an elastic. I always like to start my elastic first because then I can easily slide it under and then give it a little pull as I go. I just love the shape that this gives to the garment, and it makes sure that my gathers look perfect no matter what. Now I'm just top stitching the fabric under at my placket, and this is going to make it look so nice and so finished, but also give me the gathers that I want. Now it's time to add the buttons. So I always like to make a test buttonhole, and then I can use that to line up and to find out where I'd like my other buttonholes. So for this, because my button is 1 inch thick, it's also going to be a thicker buttonhole. So I'm going to be actually spacing this every 3 inches. And then I'm going to take it over to my other machine, and I'm going to start adding the buttonholes. And then all I have to do is sew on the buttons, and this sew is complete. And here's a close-up all done. I top stitched the princess seams in the front, and I love how petite and close together those gathers are. They're just gorgeous. And let me just show you how the inside of those pockets turned out. I love this dress so much. I hope my friend loves it as much as I do. Let me just turn this around, and you can see how adorable the back is with all that gorgeous ruched detail. I just love this pattern, and I hope you loved how this dress turned out too. Again, this is Petite Stitchery, and this is the Atley dress, and it is just gorgeous on anyone who wears it. Well, I am so excited about this. I think I'm more excited about this than when I sew for myself. I love sewing for my friends, family, and neighbors. So I'm gonna go deliver this to my friend. I hope you enjoyed today. I hope you enjoyed the different type of sewing. Thank you so much for watching. You can like, subscribe, it would be wonderful, but have a wonderful day.